It's my pleasure to introduce Rosemary Leach. I've known of her for, must be close to 15 years. When I first moved to Ottawa, one of the first sort of trips I did was a studio art tour with my mom, who came to visit. And we went out to Alma, and I think we went maybe to your house. You had a whole bunch of art exhibited and so forth, and I've sort of followed you ever since. And I once went to an exhibit over in Elmer one time as well. There was a nice little gallery there as well. So I've sort of followed you as you've matured and so forth. So when I was thinking of an interesting person to join us tonight, I thought of you as someone that might be interesting to see. Your art, as well as sort of as a businesswoman, how are you navigating through COVID and so forth. So maybe without further ado, I'll let Rosemary take it away.
Okay, thank you. So there's share screen option. Well, thank you for inviting me, Janet. And
you're welcome.
You said it
my
was
pleasure.
Well, I'm actually quite honored to be invited, and it seems like a neat organization. And it's funny because I've always sort of been a feminist, but then I kind of go, well, I haven't been part of feminist organizations, which is sort of interesting. And yeah, so I'll talk more about this as I enter into my my first PowerPoint. So I was saying that I live under a rock, and by saying that this is my first PowerPoint, I think that's really emphasizing that. So,
we're an incredibly talented group of women, but we're not judgmental.
No, well, that's great, super, that's nice. So, yeah, this I was chatting a little bit with Kaylee there about sort of early. Well, I guess in any case, this painting is a huge painting that I saw in my late 20s. I was telling Kaylee about how I'd gone to, I'd done an academic undergrad, and then all I ever wanted to do was to paint. But it didn't seem reasonable to me to be a painter. I went to Queen's and did teachers college and was just profoundly unhappy, and saved enough money teaching in order that I could go to Sheridan, where I was going to do this very practical thing of being a potter, which the reasoning behind that, that being a potter was sort of more, more grounded and practical than being a painter. And when I saw this painting by Lucian Freud, I was just like, this is really what I want to do with my life. So this was a huge painting that I saw in England, and sort of loomed over me. And I just thought, that is what I want to do with my life. That is the most exciting thing in the world. And it was also kind of a painting that I wanted to talk about because it's a painting that I've had a changing relationship with, having, I don't know, are any of you familiar with Lucian Freud? Do you know his? So he's the grandson of Sigmund, and he, when I saw this painting, I knew nothing about him. He was alive and actually was even in the room, I think, when I was in this small gallery in Northern England. And in any case, as over the years, I've sort of learned more. So Lucian Freud, was sort of, I saw this painting as like, oh, he's the great man. And that was very much the kind of household that I grew up in, where there was sort of one person that mattered, and then everyone else sort of scurried around and tried to keep that guy happy. And so Lucian Freud, in addition to being Freud's grandchild and having this big man sort of Picasso-like life, he is thought to have sired potentially 40 children. He didn't like birth control. So in any case, that was sort of, I did not know other artists at the time at all. And maybe I knew, Emily Carr and George O'Keeffe, and that was about it. So in any case, so I was very, these are one of, I'm going to show you a few early paintings that just to show the trajectory of my work. And I was very much working out of my head and really trying to find sort of cozy spaces that I felt like really, you know, I found I wasn't very adaptive in the world in a lot of ways. And I felt like, oh, like I was always trying to recreate this sort of cabin cottage experience by imagining these scenes. And so I was there, everything's very much like out of my head, you know, and this type of work that I was doing was, it actually sold pretty well. I had a good response from the world. And at the same time, I had, you know, this wasn't totally what I wanted to be doing. So, it's more that I was very happy doing what I was doing. But at the same time, I really was looking at the work of other people and sort of continuously sort of raising the bar of where I wanted my own work to go. So another kitchen counter. And one of the qualities I would say of my work that I didn't totally feel comfortable with in a way was that I found my work very girly in a way. And so I would sign my name, like I'd sign R. Leach, not Rosemary Leach. And I was very into sort of a domestic perspective, which I think at the time it was sort of what I gravitated towards, but I couldn't feel proud of it. I sort of felt like it was lesser than, you know. And I've always been very passionate about sailing. I did a whole sailing series that I called Pilgrimage, and many water scenes. And yeah, I went from a sort of academic undergrad to being this unhappy teacher to going to Sheridan and turning every pot that I was doing into a painting. And then by the time I was 30, I was painting full time, and just had let go of the pottery, and was really lamenting that I hadn't gone to school. I sort of feel like, oh, it was really obvious that I had this vocation. And I think understandably parents want to protect their kids by saying, you know, go get some practical degree. So we've spent a fair amount of time in Mexico, including taking our kids, like moving there for 6 months and putting our kids in a Mexican school. So that's filtered into my work. And blueberries are a warm fuzzy for me in terms of my childhood. Unfortunately, this is a very poor quality photo, but I feel I've selected these photos because I feel that they fit into the arc of or the trajectory of my work. And this painting is called Abuela, which is, for those of you who don't speak Spanish, it's grandmother. And one of the reasons why I chose this painting is because I feel it has like a sort of of the work that I'm showing you, there are tons of paintings that are I'm not showing, and these are in some ways I think, oh, it'd be almost more interesting to just show all the work that I threw out, or work that was sort of misguided, in not misguided, but I think it's as I get older, it's wonderful process to start to go, oh, there are these little threads, and that's, you know, that's clearer. And yeah, I'm 53 and I feel very young. I feel like, oh, I'm just kind of getting the hang of this. So this is a painting that I did. I had a show in Montreal, and like with the carrot paintings, this is sort of showing you the progression of the paintings. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Yeah, it's interesting for me to talk to a group of business and professional women, because I feel like it's, I guess there's two things going on there. In some ways, I think that, when you're an artist, you're necessarily in business, and at the same time, there are aspects of business thinking that are actually not very helpful in being an artist. And that wasn't always my feeling. Like I had a period of time where I was like, okay, I'm going to get really good at business. And that sort of productivity mindset ended up being difficult for me. I felt like it was like kind of crushing my heart, and that was affecting my work. This gives you some of the paintings I've sort of tried to give you a sense of the scale. So this is actually 3 feet long. So this is a series of bicycle paintings that I did called Personal Growth. And I've done tons of bicycles, but this is me in my studio here. So I'm not sure, Janet, if you came to this house or our previous house in Clayton, where I was on a studio tour there.
I seem to remember there was quite a large sunroom, or a room with a lot of windows. I don't know if that gives you any idea of which house, but
yeah. So our house here is much bigger than our house in Clayton, so it's probably here. So
here is Elmont?
In Elmont, yeah.
Oh, it was definitely Elmont.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So previous to that, we lived in Clayton. When we first, well, I guess just before we had children, we lived for 7 years in Clayton. And this is actually one of my first bicycle paintings. It was a commission, and I went on to do a lot of bicycles. So, and yeah. So
what I like about your art, particularly the ones where you say the domestic ones, it reminds me, you're not the same painter, but Mary Pratt really elevated, food and the elements of a kitchen, of domestic life, to a higher level. And that's what I've always liked about your work too. You've taken the ordinary things and really elevated them.
Well, thanks for saying that, Janet. And all of you, feel free to jump in at any point. Yeah, actually, there's quite a good movie about her on YouTube, if you're interested. And in the last year, I've grown really hungry for those female mentors. And as I said, when I sort of like earlier years, I didn't feel as strongly about. And I'm not exactly sure why. I think I often, maybe, when we were in the process of having kids, I just felt like I'm just trying to keep my head afloat here. And I had very strong feelings about, wanting to earn a living. And my eyes were more turned towards, in a way, like the business end of things, and less in terms of who are my mentors. And I think it's really only in recent years that I've realized that I really didn't have mentors. And, that something I'll talk a little bit more about is that women painters, women artists are really 100 years behind women writers. And that is something that it's taken me years in this world of painting, but to sort of realize how far behind we are. And there are a bunch of reasons for that. I'll talk a little bit more about that afterwards, but this sort of shows the larger than life. That gives you a sense of the scale there. And so these are paintings I've done. Now we're kind of getting into the last few years. And then I kind of got very into sort of pattern and tiles.
Yeah, it shows. Oh.
Yeah, this painting's called Poem, which is sort of like a, I guess there's a feeling that there's a feeling in my life that I very much want to bring to my art, and it's about presence. And I think sinks for me have always been very evocative, that this is a natural place of mindfulness where where we sort of pause. And so, and I spend a lot of time in the kitchen. I'm very into food, and it seemed I thought, oh, when our kids leave home, I won't cook as much, and I cook just as much. That gives you a sense of the scale there. This is a commission for it was a woman who I know who wanted to sort of memorialize their family cutlery. So, and so that gives you a sense of what the scale of that. And yeah, this is my most recent painting, which is what I very much wanting to sort of both to tighten my work and explore sort of ugly objects, so. And I included for you guys here, just because I thought, well, I can show this to them, is that when I was saying that women are really far behind, this is our, sort of showing the just sort of prices for work. And part of me even hesitates to show this stuff because it's kind of can be dispiriting. And at the same time, I'm like, if I'm not showing it to these women, it's like people don't know about this. So I recently was working on a renovation. And so I stopped in the studio for a while and started listening to a lot of artist podcasts, which ended up being really helpful for my work. And one interview I listened to was with these guerrilla girls who basically are an anonymous group that are sort of pointing out to the art world how sexist the ground is, and how they're really looking at how many solo shows do women have in New York and in the big galleries. And so I found that quite interesting, and very interesting that they feel that they can't put their names because they themselves are artists. They feel that that would be sabotaging their own careers to go public on this. So, yeah, so gives you a sense there of, and I haven't spent a lot of time looking at these issues, but for me personally, it really has been, I was very keen to, my mother was a stay-at-home mom, and I, felt that it was, a lot safer for me to earn a full living. And at the same time, I had this vocation that was very strong. And I think that, I really wrestled a lot with, aspects, things that were kind of required to, as being a business person, of being very forward and, like being able to do self-promotion, and here's what I'm doing, and isn't it great? And those were things that did not come to me very easily, particularly having had this like hyper traditional family of origin story. So in any case, I thought, well, I'll just do a little summary of enemy thinking for artists. that are actually relate to everybody. I don't think this is just about artists, but
yeah, that's what I was thinking too when I looked at it.
yeah, well, that you're, and these, some of these are just like things I've been trying to dismantle within myself. So, I mean, you would think like as an artist that there's an inherent like, oh, hey, look at me, what my ideas are genius. And like, I'm really committing myself to communicating these ideas to people. That wasn't really my feeling. My feeling was like, I can't help but want to paint my world. And that's the place where I really feel safe and happy. So, but there was another part of me that was saying, oh, your internal world is irrelevant and dangerous. And sort of, going back to the sort of personal versus political, stay small, quiet, pretty, and accommodating, that these were, I was very clear that that was the road to success, don't take up space. And when I'm saying that, that women artists are really 100 years behind, the issue of don't take up space is so relevant because being if you're a writer, you can put your notebook under your pillow, but as a visual artist, you're taking up space, you need people can see what you're doing, and you need physical space, which is, which costs money. And it's also, when you start to dig into the history of it, it's not like women artists were having a hard time, 5 generations ago. It's like 1 generation ago, for me to find, I am really interested in reading memoirs, and I've been pretty surprised at how difficult it is. The memoirs that I'm finding are, Picasso's painter wife or Lucian Freud's painter lovers. And these are women who were painters in their own right, but they have visibility. And I mean, Picasso, this is like Françoise Gillot, for instance, she was 20 when she met Picasso, and he was 60. And, there's not, I guess, of a certain type. There are certainly lots of women artists who are good at getting themselves out there, but it's certainly been a struggle for me. So some concepts that I've had to dismantle. And then I thought, well, add my notes to myself. So as I said, these are, I think, relevant to other people as well. But really learning, I recently went for a walk with a sort of 25-year-old young, like, she's a writer. She's sort of deciding, okay, I think this is really what I want to do. And something that I've been saying is like, just figuring out what you love and just sticking with, I think all of us, as you age, you kind of go, okay, there's things I don't love and I'm not doing them anymore. But yeah, I think it's that for me, realizing that things that I don't love are draining for me. So I have stopped putting cumin in your blueberry pie. It is relevant, which is a bit of a joke with a friend of mine who's sort of very much trying to focus on the positive. And it's not, I actually like cumin, but she's, she'll say, well, if you're focusing on, and that's why I sort of go, oh, like putting up statistics about how women in the art world are doing, is that something I want to focus on, or is it something that doesn't help me? And I'm a little, sometimes I'm a bit mixed on that sense, but or on that front. But
but it really does speak to the value, because as it's the value of a painting or a piece of art or a book or whatever. It's somewhat in the eye of the beholder. And what I take from that is, when you put R. Leach, if someone doesn't know if you're a man or a woman, it could be making a difference, to what you're able to get for your painting. And it's not just a piece of art. It is you know, paying your bills as well, right? And so that's a sexist comment in itself, if people are putting a different value depending on the gender of the person who painted it, you know. And that's a whole other, you know, year-long session of presentations, right, on how do people value that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's interesting things on YouTube. I mean, one of the things with like with art sort of through history is that, first of all, there's, you know, the museum buying your work, and so there's the perception of its value. And even people whose work, I mean, you take someone like Alice Neal, who just had a show in New York, but like she was 80 or something until people started actually paying attention to her. And she had all kinds of, you know, all kinds of male friends in the New York art scene. And but there was always reasons to devalue her work because it was very personal. And yeah, it in a way it was very feminine work. So and one of the things that I'm finding as I explore these women's stories is just how sad they are. So and one of the things that has been, you know, my last point here, being a feminist on the outside is not the same as integrating a pro-women culture within myself. And I think that last painting that I did is called Anima. And one of the reasons for that is because my husband and I would have been like paying more attention to our dreams. And I was having these recurring sort of failure to thrive type dreams that were very much about measuring externally. A lot of them were school related dreams, like I'm not showing up for class, or I didn't submit the assignment, or I have like, you know, like I'm registered for a course, but I don't turn up, and all this kind of stuff. And I realized, oh, I think that this is really, even though on the outside, I've very much followed my dream. Like I've, you know, really committed my life to doing, to creating work that's meaningful for me. And at the same time, I kind of realized, oh, but I still have these sort of patriarchal structures in my inner set of values. And I think this is probably true for all of us in a lot of ways. And it's dismantling that's a little trickier. It's not just a matter of like, you know, putting on my shoulder pads and, you know, going out and being like winning at a game that I think of as very masculine. You know, that was never who I was going to be. So really dismantling those like very kind of capitalist values, hierarchical values within myself has been, you know, it's been a realization for me that even though I think I'm very feminist, that there's some more deep-seated things that are where I'm diminishing things that are my role as a mother, and you know, the value that's not just the, you know, how much money I bring in. So yeah, and I thought I'd finish with this quote from, I don't know if any of you are familiar with singer-songwriter Laura Smith, but I love this quote: "My face is a map of my time here." And I thought it speaks to the individuality that all of us bring to our work. So that's it. So I'm open to, oops, how can I, are you guys still seeing my screen there?
Not now.
Okay.
What medium do you use? Oils or watercolors or something else? Acrylic?
Yeah, I'm in acrylic, using acrylics. Sorry, oh, there we go. Yeah, I'm working in acrylics. Mostly on panel, well, all the time now on panels, so.
I was fascinated by the sort of semi-mosaic effect of the light as you paint it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I don't have the right words, but
Oh my
yeah.
goodness, no.
But you know what I mean, right? Just the
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's I always want people to like to feel comfortable saying whatever. There's not a, you know, what's right is what you gravitate towards. It's like, I like this, that's what's, you know, there's no bad questions. So yeah. Anyway.
I
I've
quite
always
like
liked-
your work.
Okay. Go, Kaylee.
I was going to say, I quite like your work, Rosemary. You're quite prolific and your subject material is very broad. How do you choose your subjects?
Oh, I honestly, I could start a new painting every 5 minutes. I don't, yeah, I really, that it's almost like an animist quality in me, like that I look at something and it sort of seems to have a personality, or there's a like a sort of spiritedness to everything around us, and it's more a matter of stopping than it is that, yeah, like that last picture of sort of the liquid detergent or whatever. Like, I feel pretty inspired by absolutely everything around us. So
I always liked how you say like that one where you have a sink. I don't know if this is exactly one, but I'll just use a sink that's sort of white or, cream enamel color. And then you mix it with a beautiful mosaic in the back. And, the mosaic might be blue and the sink is, kind of a cream color, and then other colors. I mean, and the richness, even though they're soft, they're not boldly painted. They're all sort of dabbed. I don't know the painting language, but that's what I've always liked about your work. It's I find it's warm and accessible. It's not stark or, and I guess because it is everyday life, but you're celebrating that everyday life. Like you say, you found, something in the, what do you call that? Dishwasher detergent or whatever, a dish.
yeah, the liquid dish soap.
Whatever you
Yeah.
call that thing. And there is beauty in everyday things, and you've picked that up. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah, well, I really feel like we've really lost our ability to, I don't know, it's like I feel like over time there's sort of such a, I don't know, a hunger for meaning and a hunger for presence. And at the same time, people just like overfill their calendars and sort of feel like it's as if people feel good about that. People feel good about, like, look how busy I am and how much in demand I am. And that, I really feel like, I feel that quality of connection that people have with my work is very, very much, it's often sort of what you're saying, Janet, that people feel like, oh, like I forget that there's a warmth to things, and that there's a warmth to my own life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there women artists that have inspired you, that you've sort of looked at their art or adapted a style or, an approach or something like that?
It's really interesting. I really turn very much to women. I mean, I write quite a bit as well. I keep a journal, like really, like that's sort of coming to ground for me, is like I'll write my journal daily, and I haven't, in terms of like the art world, I feel like, oh, there's like just a handful of people, like maybe 4 or 5 people who I'm like, I'm really studying this person. I'm really trying to figure out what it is they're doing, maybe what it is that they're doing with pattern. One person that's actually recently been quite inspiring for me is Zoe Frank. and she's an American, she's young. But I actually do, just honestly, like I often find, and I don't know if it's that because this is what's coming across my desk or whatever, when I go, oh, like who are the people I'm paying attention to right now? Like 1 out of 5. So Zoe Frank is the only woman, I think. You know, but in terms of writing, I'm reading only women. So it's like just going through, I mean, anything from Virginia Woolf's diaries to, yeah, Catherine Mansfield, up to like much more contemporary memoirs, which they give me a lot of strength for sure. And painting itself doesn't, I'm actually kind of interested in everybody. I sort of feel like everybody has an interesting story, and it's more how it's told that's interesting to me. If it's very distant, no matter who it's written by, I just somehow, I give up on books pretty easily, so.
I have a question, Rosemary.
Hmm.
Do you offer classes or speaking sessions to discuss arts and the business aspect of your work?
Sorry, the question is, am I offering classes? Is that what you said?
Or even speaking sessions, public speaking sessions regarding arts or the business aspect of your work?
Oh, so yeah, like I've spoken to a lot of art groups. But I'm happy to talk about that. So the business aspect of my work has been, yeah, it's been my biggest challenge. And I mean, people, I heard my son say, oh, like, yeah, well, like other artists, he's like, his friend was kind of crappy at self-promotion. And I'm like, oh, I can't believe he said it, like, because I've really tried to do self-promotion. And at the same time, I have found it really pretty difficult. It probably, compared to a lot of people, I actually do pretty well with like, for the amount of energy that I put into it, I think I've had, like, it's gone really, really well. I'm always reluctant to do the flag waving part of it. So, and I'm not a huge, I'm really like practically allergic to social media, which is definitely a problem. However, I've kind of found a more peaceful place with it. And that is that, so it's funny, years ago, like probably 10, 15 years ago, I was talking to my therapist and I'm like, oh, this is like killing me. And she's like, well, what do you want? And I'm like, well, what I want is for someone, I want to paint till 3 p.m. And then I want someone to come and pick up the work. And she was like, well, that's, like, that for some people, that's reality. And I'm like, what planet are you living on? Like, that is not, like, I'm like, that is so flaky that you think that's possible. But now I kind of really have decided I do not want to get really good at marketing. I want to be a really good artist. And so, and I can't be everything. So in terms of my own work, I've had, I mean, in terms of like teaching balance, like I've had workshops 3 times a year in my home. I've done the gallery model, and sort of, I didn't find it, so galleries take 50%, which, if you're already promoting yourself anyway, or you're, it's not just that it's a big chunk, it's that it's not actually 50% less work. It's the exact same amount of work. So and so in terms of my laughing about my therapist, Maggie, saying that and me thinking she was so out to lunch, like it's happened. It's sort of normal now for me to put a little bit of, put my painting out there, and I don't know, like 3/4 of the time it sells. And so, yeah, so in terms of earning a living, which is always the question that I have when I'm listening to artists, it's like, all right, let's talk numbers here. I've had years where, I've, like, my biggest year, I made like $40,000, and I've had years where I've made like $5,000, so, and they weren't, like, I can't even, that it matters to me a lot more now. Like there was a period of time where I would have said, oh yeah, the $40,000, that's of course my best year. And I'm feeling less that way now. I'm really emotionally attached to the growth in my work. And I've really enjoyed the COVID closed doors. Like that's actually been great for me, because I feel like I'm not a performer. I'm really a painter, and I want to just sink into that. So it's sort of, it's a roundabout answer to your question, Arzu, but I think that in the world of marketing, you know, there's rules like post all the time, and you know, 50% of your time is spent you know, connecting with the public. And I think I've really started to question the wisdom around that, because I think when we see work that moves us, we remember it. And the rest of it is like that painting that I showed you in the beginning, that painting stayed with me for, you know, decades. And I think it's, yeah, these are tricky issues for sure. And it's been for sure an issue in my relationship with Jake, where it's been really difficult, like that difficult for me in my relationship with myself, and difficult for us as a couple, that my income has just been all over the place. So I hope that answers your question.
I see, Rosemary, that was very smart. That I'm a writer. Even I've learned that you have to market a lot if you want to sell. But I agree with you that if it's a memorable work, then it will still be remembered. So you need to focus on your work. Okay, that was a really great point.
Well, I think that it's really, I guess, when you have been around for like a chunk of time, you start to see there's just all these waves of nonsense. So like in, you know, when I was teaching school, there would be like, oh, you know, it's best to have classes with 50 kids. And then they go, oh no, it's best to have classes with 20 kids. And I think every profession has these trends. And that I even saw something like where that whole trend of like, oh, post. Now there's like, I think there's a new trend of like, oh no, go to the studio and work, you know? And so I think that's probably true for there's contradictions, excuse me, in any profession, I'm sure.
Yeah. One thing is as I've been on my journey of being an entrepreneur, and I learned this from, you know, women that I met through different business networking groups and so forth, is the whole thing about do what you do well and get other people to help you on the things that they do well to help you. So just for instance, and I'm not trying to push this, but just for example, someone who's an artist like yourself, you concentrate on the artwork and then get someone that can help you market, whoever that is and however you feel comfortable. And I've seen success where someone's not trying to, like me, I don't know social media at all. So I would spend a huge amount of time and probably it wouldn't be very successful and it wouldn't be very impactful. Because I'd be learning all the tools, learning all the ways in which you know, put the words together, and then trying to get it out there on whatever platform is suitable to marketing my service. Where someone else has that expertise and can tease those things out, you know. I don't know, is that something you've ever thought about or considered, as using someone that can help you advertise, however that is, market, advertise, whatever, in a way that you feel comfortable?
Yeah, for me personally, and it's a discussion I've had quite a bit, and it like everything else in my career, rationally, what you're saying completely makes sense. And one of the things for me, and I may one day decide that I want to do that, but I produce, my work takes a long time. I have a lot of failures. And so I'm not, and they're not failures because they are people who are good artists, they get rid of a lot of work, and they will work.
Same as writers, right? They rewrite
Yeah, right.
many edits, right?
Exactly. You work on a book for months and months, and then you're like, no. And you throw it in the trash, and then the next book that you start is actually really the foundation of the next, like, it's not trash, you know. And I think it's taken me really a long time to learn that. And so my voice, whether it's on social media, or, you know, doing something like this, like, it completely makes sense to have someone else do your social media. But because I write, and because there's a real, like, my viewpoint is very, very specific to me, I am uninspired to hand my voice over, even if it's just like someone going around, like, people go, you know, you go and like things on behalf of Rosemary Leach and then put a paragraph in. I wouldn't want anyone to write on my behalf. And in terms of my visual subject matter, or my visual production, it's right now anyway, it's like very slow. I mean, it's not difficult for me to post, you know, a handful of paintings a year. So it's more about me coming to a peaceful place around, I'm not that person. I'm not the kind of person who's posting all the time.
And you definitely have to feel comfortable in whatever way the advertising is, whether it's online or some other way, you know, it has to feel authentic. You have to feel okay with it, right?
Well,
you know, social media or other mediums, right? You have to feel comfortable.
Yeah, I've kind of, like, I even went to an entrepreneur camp, and I, like, listened to all these, like, solopreneur things and all this stuff. And then I realized it's not, if I had been, I didn't want to get good at marketing. Like, that's not what, that's not the trajectory of my story. And it's not really my, I realized that and I had people helping me with it. Like, I had someone who really generously gave me a lot of his time. And so, yeah, it's kind of finding I've just decided, okay, if we die with a mortgage, fine. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So in any case, I will, I thank you again, all of you, for having me. And if there's if anybody else have anything to say, I'm happy to answer. Or if you, once I get back into having open houses, I hope you guys will come out.
Any other comments or thoughts?
Okay. Good night, everyone.
I want to really thank you for making the time.
Yeah.
And I know we chatted and you chatted with Arzu as well about your presentation tonight. So I really, really thank you. I thank you for sharing your art and your feelings and sort of your approach to your art and your life. So thank you again.